Hi, I'm Chloe Learey, the Executive Director of the Winston Prouty Center. Welcome to our next edition of Family Matters. And I'm very excited this month. We are breaking with our pattern of talking about developmental stages, and we're going to talk about why we celebrate Month of the Young Child. So April is the Month of the Young Child, and I'm very happy that we have Sueño LeBlond here. She is the Early Education Outreach Specialist for Windham Child Care Association, and she's been very involved with Month of the Young Child activities. So we thought it was a perfect time to talk about, I think, not just Month of the Young Child and like what's happening, but why is it important to celebrate it? So welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
It's fun to have you here. Let's start, well, why don't you talk a little bit first about what you do. What is an Early Education Outreach Specialist at Windham Child Care doing?
Oh, the Early Education Outreach Specialist reaches out into the community and engages with the children and early child care professionals in our county. And I do so mainly on the Early Learning Express bookmobile. So you might have seen me in the big purple and green bookmobile bus, and more recently in a Subaru traveling, bringing story time and library resources to early educators in our region.
That's great. That's so fun.
It is very fun. I love it.
Are you driving the Subaru because it's better in the snow than the big bus?
That's the idea, and also because the bus is unheated, so
we can't do that.
Story time is less fun when your toes are cold and your nose is running in the cold.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, great. Let's talk about, just start with, what is Month of the Young Child, and then move into why is it important for us to celebrate it?
So the Month of the Young Child is a celebration that our region puts on, piggybacking on the National Association of the Education of Young Children, otherwise NAEYC. So they started the Week of the Young Child many years ago, I believe in the 70s.
Yes.
Okay, and so our region decided to take it on and build it up into a whole month to celebrate young children, their families, and the people who support young children and their families. Yeah.
And what is it about, why is that important?
Oh,
from your perspective? That's a big question.
It is a big question. So young children are our future. Their families are the present day. And the education and the community that surrounds young children really affects all of us. And in many ways, it's a part of education and time of life, which seems like it's too early to think about or talk about. We're so focused on K-12 and college education and how we get access for everybody to go to free college. Great aspirations. But really, everything begins in the very early years of life. The structure of our brains, the architecture, the building blocks that college education builds on starts in the first year of life.
That's a great point. There is a lot of conversation about college, especially like I'm just thinking of, I think it's a Bernie thing to talk about particularly, and how it's a great aspiration, but if you don't have that good foundation, how are you actually going to take advantage of it in the way that works?
Very true.
You said something about, I just wanted to follow on that it's not, even though it's called Month of the Young Child, it's not just about young children.
No.
So talk a little bit more about that.
Sure.
What do you mean?
So young children aren't living in a bubble. They don't exist in a bubble with other young children. Toddlers aren't toddlers together. They're really part of a larger ecosystem, beginning with their families, who are often looking for support and outreach and help with raising their young children. And young children are part of their school or their caregivers, whether that be a family, a relative, whether it's a home daycare provider or a center-based program. That's all part of the young child's world. And then even beyond that, the experiences beyond every day that a child experiences, going to the grocery store or going to the library or a walk in the woods, all of this is relevant to the education and the well-being of young children, their families, and their community beyond.
And the use of the word education maybe is something to drill into a little bit, because I think it, we talk about, some people even resist saying that young children are going to school. I think there's tension in the community, in the early childhood education community, about it's not school. If you call it school, it sort of, puts this box around it. So, what do you think about that word, the word education, in terms of how to describe what's happening for infants and toddlers and preschoolers?
School is a loaded word, I think, right? When we picture school, we picture the schoolhouse, the dinging bells, but education, we think lifelong learning, right? I'm still learning. My education is coming from the world. I'm doing that, so are children. Their education is coming from the world. I think about, if any of us reflect back on who are we? What makes me who I am? The answer is experience, right? So those are this stack of experiences, beginning with my very early years. And children just have fewer experiences in many ways. And so we're trying to give them quality experiences, and that happens with their home child care provider. That happens if they're staying with grandma. That happens if they're staying at home with their mom or in a playgroup. These are all enriching experiences that we want to bring to our children and offer them and make available to all families.
I like that you're saying that it's sort of like the world is the classroom, and making the point that we're all lifelong learners, hopefully. Or that there's, there are particular formal things we might do, but maybe that helps understand this time of life as a time of that it's really that whole world. All those experiences and quality experiences are important.
Engaging. It's all engagement, right? Quality engagement with the world. So.
And this, you referenced this a little bit, but this particular, what is young? When we say young child, what do we mean? That's maybe a good question.
A lot of people tend to go right to preschool or maybe toddlers. Technically, the early childhood field is birth to age 8, which encompasses third graders. I think that's very important, and to remember that this whole 8 years is a time when children are very elastic, their brains are elastic, their bodies are moving, and the type of learning and engaging and thinking that they're doing is still very much about the world, right here, right now, this immediacy of what's around them. And so, and the doingness of things. As we see in early childhood at the public school, a lot of times things are going too heady, very heady, very quickly, and educators know, and there's this pushback against, we need recess. That is when I see the kids at their most real. That's how I learn who my kids are, because we're trying so much this more cognitive approach with young children, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah. So I think you're right. A lot of people don't, that birth to 8, that's a bigger span. I think most people are thinking that young child means, baby or maybe toddlers and preschoolers, but not necessarily.
I like to think of it as the age of wonder.
The whole time.
This whole time, like, you can still go out into the woods with a 7-year-old and look for unicorns and gnomes. They are game. And then it starts to disappear. They start to, more rational thinking happens, and the age of wonder hopefully doesn't totally disappear. Hopefully we can still access that with the right foundational learning in early childhood.
Right, back to why is this so important? It sets the stage and the foundation for everything that's to come. And so how does something like Month of the Young Child, do you think, help people celebrate or be aware of this important time of life?
I think it's an opportunity for visibility, to put out there that it is a thing, that young children are something to celebrate. I think it helps young families who may still be learning to navigate having young children, to see a poster or a brochure and be, oh my gosh, look at all these activities that I could be doing. And it helps area organizations and providers, the libraries and other places who do services for children, to have people come in and experience it at no cost, to try things out that they might not otherwise feel willing to try without a little encouragement. So I think that's one of the big ways. And I think it's also nice, having been working with this committee, to bring all these different people from around the area who serve young children and their families in different ways, to get together and say, what can we do? That alone is wonderful.
It is, and that's I think a lot about how fragmented systems can be sometimes, and how how do families even know what's out there, and how do they access it? And so
it's difficult.
It can be really challenging. So one way to combat it might be, these kinds of opportunities aren't just for the kids, or even just for the parents or families, but also for those of us who work with families and young children to come together and find ways to be better.
It's important to remember that we all work with families of young children. They're part of the structure of our community, right? And if these families are struggling meeting the needs of their young children, they're less available to be supporting the community as a whole.
But that's, that thinking about, I feel like families get pretty isolated sometimes. It's really hard. Yeah. It's a lot of work, and there's not a lot of training. I think I've even said on this program before, like, you have to, get a license to drive a car, but you can just have a kid. That's a quote from a famous movie, I'm sure. But so to combat when families aren't available to be part of the community, or if it's hard to do that, there are bigger impacts. It is not just about me and my kid, and you better be good at raising your kid. It affects us all.
It affects us all. And when a child is sick, how can we support that family? Or even if a family just has questions like, I don't understand this behavior, right? That can be really stressful. And when you're feeling alone, like, to be able to open up the conversation and say, you're not alone. Look at all these other families with young children, and here are some different resources in the community to help you better understand what you can do.
And back to, again, I just keep coming back to the title, Month of the Young Child, and how I almost wonder if it's a misnomer. It's like Month of the Young Child and Family, or I don't know, not that it's bad, concept. But how do we keep conveying that holistic approach, that children are part of their family? If you want to work with young children, you better be good at working with adults too, because it's all sort of connected. So how do we get that message continually out there, that this is these are opportunities for parents to learn as well and connect with each other? So using, I don't know, it's just an interesting...
No, I think about that a lot too. And when as an early childhood professional, I go in loving children, and being in the field for a while now, I realize that it's far more than working with children. Building trusting relationships with families is critical. Oftentimes you're the first person who is watching their dear, sweet child, which is hard and scary, right? It's very scary. And then the other role of early childhood educators, which can be very difficult, is being the first person to realize that some early intervention might be needed to help support a child to be ready for school, or for growing, or for further learning. And so having that strong relationship with the family as a whole, and with other service providers, and understanding how that works is a big part of early childhood professionals, their job.
Right. And that phrase professional, I think, is also something that we struggle with, that people will say, it's just babysitting.
It is not just babysitting. It is way more than that. Yeah.
So we are going to take a very quick break and hear a message from Let's Grow Kids about the importance of the early years, and then we'll come back and talk some more.
For the youngest among us, playtime is more than just fun. It's learning and development. When we stimulate a child's curiosity and natural desire to connect with others, we help them develop the important skills needed for school, relationships, and life. Join Let's Grow Kids to help all of our children reach their full potential. Learning starts day one.
And now we're back and talking with Sueño LeBlond about the importance of early childhood. And one way we celebrate that is Month of the Young Child. So April is the Month of the Young Child. And in our region, coordinated by a lot of people in the early childhood profession, largely sponsored by Building Bright Futures of Southeastern Vermont and Windham Child Care, the Starting Point Networks. Lots of, again, professional groups come together to put this together. And it's a great opportunity to not only celebrate young children, but to understand that young children are parts of their families, to help families connect, to celebrate families and those of us who work with all of them. So let's talk a little bit about some of the activities that are on the docket for April and why some of them are important or what's particularly sort of the intent behind them.
Sure. So in the calendar of the Month of the Young Child for the month of April are a lot of free activities at places that usually have a fee. So we're trying to bring families out to say, hey, check out these resources that we have in our community. There's Kids Place here in Brattleboro. We have vouchers to the Children's Museum in Keene. That's an opportunity. And a lot of other one-time activities that are available, as well as ongoing events. We like to highlight that go on, particularly at libraries. There's always these toddler times and preschool story hours that go on throughout the year that some families might not be aware of, and they're a great place to access for not only literacy development for your children, but also a place to connect with other adults, which I think we were talking earlier is really important when you're feeling lonely or isolated raising a child, and maybe your close friends aren't in the same time of parenting, right? So you might have a 2-year-old and your friends maybe don't have children yet, or their kids are in elementary school and you're like, I am alone with a 2-year-old toddler who is pulling everything off the shelves. No, you're not.
Right.
No, you're not. Go to one of these events. It's a great opportunity to meet other families, make connections, set up a play date, look at the calendar and decide, hey, maybe we should check this one out next week. So
great.
Yeah.
And I've just, we were talking about that one of the things that happens in early childhood with early childhood professionals is you might be the first person to help a family know that their kid might need a little extra help to develop in the best way possible.
Yes.
That and that's so important in this time because the brain is this is like the best time to get at that
it early, yes.
And how important. And so these times of connection too can also help people know. I think there's a mix and a match of, if you're worried about your kid, you might not want to be around other families because you end up comparing your child to them. But what I was thinking is maybe it's actually a great opportunity for that support. Like, oh, maybe I should get some help, or I could ask my pediatrician about that, or how do you think I could approach it so that, because the other thing is not all children are in early care and education.
Very true.
So these are good opportunities maybe for that kind of connection to happen.
And it's okay to be asking those questions. And if you are, please reach out and ask whether it's your pediatrician or a friend who's had kids, and find the help, because early childhood, that's when all of these base layers of the brain are set up, right? And we want to be able to help early.
Yes, we do. I was just thinking of, by the time they even get to kindergarten, it's not too late. It's never too late. People can always keep learning, as we talked about before, but it's just easier to catch it early.
It is.
The more we can help people understand why birth to 3 and then beyond also, but is such a critical time, the better I think lots of people will be.
Yeah.
So do you think that in terms of you know, since there isn't a lot of training to be a parent, so to speak, you don't have to get a license. Do you think there is pressure at all for parents to feel like they're supposed to be good parents just out of the gate? I'm just wondering, you know, when we were talking about whether or not to call for resources or call for help or ask your pediatrician, I'm just thinking about that question of
the pressure of being a good parent is intense.
Right.
It is intense. And families aren't meant to raise children alone, right? I mean, it's a group effort. It takes a village. And because there isn't the training, no one expects a parent to be the expert. Of course, you know your child best, and what a great gift that is. But there's, you know, these children growing up in a larger culture with all these other pieces of influence, and it's important to recognize that and know that there are professionals out there who love helping. That's why they're there, right? So, yeah, you kind of have to be like, I am doing my best, and maybe I need someone else's best too, and that's okay. And
that's a great way to put
that's
it.
why everyone's here. That's why we have early childhood professionals, people who love it and know and have learned and are still learning how to help each child their best.
I like that too, that being the professional gives you expertise in something, but every child is different. And so it has to be sort of this joining together with a family and with the child, right? Children are informing their own development, that they are a critical piece of that. You know, we can't do things to kids. We are all, you know, sort of, we have roles to play, and that's how optimal development happens in the context of who is this kid? What does this kid need?
And in that process, we're teaching children that there is help, and it's okay to ask for help, and I am part of a greater system that supports other people so that we can be a better whole. You know, and if you're having questions about your child's behavior, reaching out and getting help is supporting you, your child's future, and therefore everyone else that is going to interact with you and your children. It's such a lovely thing.
It's the ideal scenario. And you just earlier mentioned that I think we were talking about judgment, and maybe that's part of the fear too. Is that if maybe we're our own worst judges of ourselves as parents, but I think that fear of how if your child's acting out, that it somehow reflects on you as a bad parent. And maybe that's another piece of Month of the Young Child that I know it's meant to be celebratory and sort of expose help people know why it's so important. I wonder if there could also be a way it helps inform people, don't be so judgmental. Let's be all in this together somehow. Like, what part of it can we help to support families to do well?
I like that. I like thinking about that.
I think it is a good opportunity. So, what else about early childhood do you think is important for people to know about this time of life?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is we were talking about the babysitter stigma of early childhood, and I think it's really important for the community and the culture to really understand that people who choose to go into early child care, whether it's a home daycare provider or a center-based teacher, these are people who are committing their lives to work with the youngest children, the future, our future, and that they're coming to it with intention and purpose, and all day long it's this mindful decision of how to respond to each child in their care. It's not babysitting, right? And there's also, to understand that this is a profession. People are expected to do continuing education, professional development, constantly learning and being updated on best practices. And for me, I think part of this Month of the Young Child and the idea that NAEYC has with creating this Week of the Young Child is also celebrating these people as professionals, and trying to really bring to light to the culture as a whole that we are a part of this profession of value, right? And to try to raise awareness around that. I'd like to see more of that, you know, as someone who's coming from this field and, oh, she's just a preschool teacher. You know, it's even like you don't even teach kindergarten or first grade. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm preparing children for kindergarten and first grade. I am helping to lay the foundation for this child's whole life and their success. We are.
Yes, right. And there's so much the value of school-based learning, quote unquote, so that little red schoolhouse image versus, you know, shifting that value to, wow, we aren't even going to be successful here if we don't make this foundation. So again, back to education, like a little kid, their education is being ready to be available for learning. And that's the importance of this profession.
Absolutely.
And people need to know how important that is.
So important.
So,
and I feel like, you know, when families are bringing their children, they realize how valuable it is. And hopefully people who no longer have young children are reminded, oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing that when I needed it. And there's still families that need it, right?
That's a great point. That, you know, it's easy in parental stages, we lose people because they do graduate to kinder, you know, they go on, but to remind people of what they had, and then maybe that will keep people involved in understanding it. So
yeah, please stay involved.
I know, right? We have just a little bit more time. Are there a couple activities? So you can find the calendar at windhamchildcare.org. And
yes, and there are posters around town and brochures at many sites that serve families and young children. And I did want to make sure to invite everyone to the kickoff event. It's our 12th annual Young Children's Exhibit. It's at the River Garden, April 2nd. It's a Saturday. April 2nd, 10 to 12.
Great.
And there will be art from young artists throughout the region, activities for families and their children, refreshments, and most importantly, more information about all of the Month of the Young Child activities.
Is there anything else you're particularly excited about besides the kickoff?
Okay. There are. So I really wanted to bring attention to a couple of infant opportunities.
Great.
So much of it is toddlers and preschoolers. And so I have 2 infant activities that I'd like to share. One of them is a baby wearing yoga class in Putney. That's on April 10th. It's a Sunday, so check that out, 11:30 a.m. And one of my colleagues is doing an infant massage class at Windham Child Care Association. Oh, it's not at Windham Child Care Association, but at the Brattleboro Center for Children.
Great.
Yeah.
And when is that one?
That one is Saturday, April 16th at 9:30. So we're including the little people this time, the littlest of the little people.
The littlest. Wonderful. Well, Sueño, it has been so fun to talk to you about this.
Great,
thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. It's been great.
On Family Matters. So,
thank you.
Thanks. And then we can sit and chat for a minute so that he has some of us chatting.
All right. Do you have your own kids?
I do.
Yeah.
I have a 15-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl. They both went to Prouty.
They did.
So.
Back in the